Everyone thinks Johnny Appleseed was a whimsical wanderer. They're wrong. The popular image of Johnny Appleseed is a gentle, almost cartoonish figure. A man in a pot hat, scattering seeds with a smile, bringing sweet apples to all. But the truth of John Chapman, the man behind the myth, is far more complex, driven by a deep spiritual conviction and a shrewd business sense that shaped America's westward expansion. Born John Chapman in Leominster, Massachusetts, in 1774, his early life was marked by upheaval. The American Revolution was just beginning, and his family, like many, experienced hardship and relocation. This instability might have sown the seeds for his later nomadic life, a constant movement across the American frontier. He wasn't just a drifter. Chapman was a devout follower of Emanuel Swedenborg, a Swedish theologian whose teachings emphasized living a life of simplicity, harmony with nature, and spreading spiritual enlightenment. This faith became the bedrock of his unique mission. He began his apple planting journeys around the turn of the 19th century, pushing ahead of the main waves of settlers into the Ohio River Valley. This wasn't a whimsical scattering, it was strategic. Land laws of the time often required settlers to establish an orchard within a few years to prove permanent residency. Chapman saw this as an opportunity, both for his spiritual mission and as a practical way to earn a living. He didn't plant edible table apples, not primarily anyway. He planted apple seeds not grafts, which meant the resulting fruit was largely unpredictable, often small, tart, and bitter. So, if not for eating out of hand, what were these apples for? The primary use was cider. Hard cider was a staple beverage, safer than water in many frontier settlements, and a valuable commodity. These apples were also used for animal feed and making applejack. He would establish nurseries, fencing off plots of land, planting seeds, and leaving them to grow. Years later, when settlers arrived, he would sell them young trees at a reasonable price, often on credit, sometimes even bartering for goods or services. His business model was surprisingly modern. He was a pioneer of franchising, establishing these small, self-sustaining operations across hundreds of miles. He understood supply and demand long before economic textbooks were written about it. Chapman traveled light, often barefoot, wearing simple, worn clothing. The famous pot hat, likely an exaggeration. While he might have worn utilitarian headwear, a cooking pot was probably too heavy and impractical for constant wear. He was known for his kindness to both people and animals. Stories abound of him rescuing sick animals, walking miles out of his way to avoid disturbing a nest, and preaching peace and goodwill to anyone who would listen. His spiritual beliefs permeated everything. He believed that harming any creature was a sin and that the natural world held divine lessons. This reverence for life made him a beloved, if eccentric, figure on the frontier. He was also a vegetarian, a rare practice in an era where meat was a primary source of sustenance. This added to his mystique, setting him apart from the rugged, meat-eating frontiersmen of the time. Chapman served as an early warning system for settlers, traveling between Native American tribes and white settlements, often relaying information about potential conflicts. He was respected by both sides for his neutrality and peaceful intentions. His journeys spanned decades, from Pennsylvania and Ohio to Indiana and Illinois. He was a living legend in his own time, a harbinger of civilization, planting the future one apple seed at a time, moving ever westward. The myth of Johnny Appleseed began to solidify after his death in 1845. Writers and storytellers, looking for figures to embody the American spirit, romanticized his life, smoothing out the rough edges and amplifying the more charming aspects. The image of him distributing sweet, crisp-eating apples is a modern invention, a product of a later era when grafting became common and apple varieties were cultivated for specific tastes. His legacy was transformed to fit a new narrative. He died a relatively wealthy man, owning several tracts of land and hundreds of thousands of trees. His wealth wasn't in gold, but in green, in the living, breathing orchards that dotted the expanding American landscape. John Chapman's story reminds us that history is often far more nuanced than the simple tales we inherit. He was an environmentalist before the term existed, a businessman with a spiritual calling, and a quiet force in shaping a nation. He wasn't just planting apple trees. He was planting communities, providing the economic and social backbone for settlers. His efforts allowed families to put down roots, literally and figuratively, in new territories. The next time you bite into an apple, consider the true story of John Chapman. Not the myth, but the man whose quiet dedication, business acumen, and unwavering spiritual conviction helped cultivate the American dream, one seed at a time. What other American legends hide a deeper truth? Let us know in the comments.